think about the universe, Mr. Trout? What if our world is just like a tiny speck?
A tiny little speck.
And they're a giant looking down on us.
And every time we move,
it's actually them moving us.
The practice of stop motion can be seen as an underrated art when it comes to film and entertainment. The countless hours required to move a single puppet across a set just to film 30 seconds may seem like a dauntless task to some, but to others, it's an experience animators can't wait to see finalized. Beginning as the first of its kind, El Apostol was released in 1917 and was recognized as the starting point of the art of stop motion in the entertainment world. To this day, the stop motion style continues to be used as a means of entertainment for adults and children by retelling fairy tales, cultural lore, and other creative tales in a way that is both fun to watch and share with others. In the early 2000s, DreamWorks Studios partnered up with Aardman Studios, an animation studio well known for its stop-motion animation, and together they were able to produce 3 stop-motion films: Chicken Run, Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit, and Flushed Away. While these 3 films were memorable and fun, they hadn't quite reached out to a wider demographic outside of family-friendly kid films, and in a similar approach, motion director Wes Anderson would release 2 stop-motion films of his own, in 2009 and 2018. While the film Fantastic Mr. Fox was being marketed as a children's movie, it was instead recognized and praised by critics for being another Wes Anderson production targeted towards adults, and was noted for not being a proper adaptation to the original Roald Dahl book of the same name. However, in 2009, one stop-motion production studio released a movie that was able to stand out of the stop-motion crowd because it was able to present something new to the table. That movie was Coraline, and that studio was Laika. When it came out, critics were blown away by the story, animation, and creativity behind it, calling the film a bona fide fairy tale and having a touch more story than other stop-motion films. This trend would continue for their next 4 films, and with each film, critics and audiences would find something new to admire about stop-motion films as well as how Laika presents them. This leads to the question: has Laika Studios redefined the art of stop-motion animation when it comes to feature films?
Want to hear my new song?
My father can't play piano.
No need to. This piano plays me. Ugh.
There are 2 main characteristics that Laika aims to incorporate in all of their productions. The first characteristic is their ability to expand their audience's narrative to allow all audiences to see their films as more than simple stories for children. The other characteristic is their innovation to push technological limits when making a movie and carry those limits to the next film onwards. Laika CEO Travis Knight was interviewed by Wired in 2014 about his handling of the studio and the films they produced. In that article, he addressed that an evolution of motion was something he wanted Laika to be known for. He continued to express how when you're telling a story, you want the audience to believe that the world and characters on the screen are real and are not seen as simple puppets or CGI characters. In the same Wired article, Knight continues to share that he wants to tell stories with an artful balance between darkness and light, intensity and warmth. This direction of storytelling proved to be a challenge for their film adaptations of Coraline and the Box Trolls. Because they were based off of novels and already had unique worlds and stories, any changes or alterations would need to fit into the narrative already provided by the source material. When Henry Selick, director of Nightmare Before Christmas, was brought on to the production team of Coraline, he believed that the movie would end up as a 47-minute production. With his help and creative input, Laika was able to change that prediction into a film that stood at 1 hour and 40 minutes, as well as tell a faithful adaptation of the Neil Gaiman classic. Some of these changes were the introduction of newer characters for the main character to interact with, as well as fleshing out the plot to help drive the sense of mystery and danger that the other world contained. As another production based on a novel, The Box Trolls had to be a condensed retelling of its original 550-page story, Here Be Monsters by Alan Snow. By cutting out a majority of additional characters, plots, and themes, The Box Trolls was able to focus on key characters, a single plot, and a coherent narrative. While the film received mixed reviews, critics could all agree that Laika's approach of narrowing down and restructuring the plot allowed an easier story to be told for children to understand, as well as a creative world with relatable themes and characters for adults to follow as well. By structuring the films around their stories first and world second, Laika is able to maintain a healthy balance between the two in order to build the real worlds their characters inhabit behind the scenes. In the early days of stop motion, animators would use various materials and objects, such as puppets, household items, clay, and metal, as their tools of animation. Nowadays, it is a common practice for animators to use clay puppets with wireframe skeletons to move their characters around, and Laika is no exception. As they focus on using wireframe skeletons as their puppet's base, they decided to take things to the next level and incorporate 3D printing in the making of their characters. This was a tremendous help when it came to facial expressions because it allowed them to establish a technique they call replacement animation.
This feels very confined.
This technique allows Laika animators to swap around facial expressions and body parts of their puppets to allow smoother transitions and motions from one scene to the next. Unlike the movie Coraline, where the film's biggest challenge was making a giant dreamlike garden set piece, each new film Laika would make would tackle more challenging problems that would require newer and more clever solutions to resolve. From contact lighting components installed into the models of the box trolls to make their faces more expressive and hide electrical wires, to giant scale replicas of monsters to fit into the world of Kubo and the Two Strings, Laika has met every challenge head-on and hands-on, knowing that they could use their solutions to aid them in their next film without having to rely entirely on CGI. The only times Laika would add CG effects to their productions would be to fill in an environment that couldn't be replicated by a puppet or set, and on occasion to fill in a spot for a scene that had no puppet to manipulate. This practice has allowed animators at Laika to stay focused on perfecting their stop-motion characters, as well as blending the magic of film to create a new illusion of what is or isn't real on the big screen. In the span of 10 years, Laika was able to release 5 movies, each one seen as an innovative and creative mix of traditional stop-motion animation and new technologies. Their unique spin on the style of stop motion has enabled them to create whole new worlds that are stunning, grim, charming, mystical, and adventurous. The stories they tell have easy morals for children to understand, but larger and relatable messages for adults as well if they are willing to look beyond the puppets and invest themselves in the world they see before them. While there is no accurate way to tell if Laika has redefined the art of stop-motion animation for the film industry, it is up to us as the audience to make that decision as well as appreciate the impact that they have left on the industry. The animators and creative force that make up Laika continue to march forward with their craft, showing no intention of stopping, leaving us as the audience to await their next project and see where they will take us next.